Hello guys, here we have the top 10 top worst and best single stage Pokemon of all time. First of all, legendaries are excluded from this list. Legendaries are excluded from this list at all because legendaries get their own list, the best and worst. But yep, here we have the top 10 worst and best. Oh no, not top 10, the top worst and best single stage evolution. So my least favorites and my favorites. So yep. And yeah, legendaries will be excluded as well. So we'll start with the worst. I think the worst single stage evolution has to be Bruxis. Bruxis is just so creepy and just awful. It's just every second I take a look at this thing, I'm just like disgusted every single time I look at this thing. Okay, of all the Pokemon in Gen 7, this is like the Pokemon I feel most uncomfortable looking at. You know, the other Pokemon I feel uncomfortable looking at is like Mr. Mime, Jinx, Crabominable, those other Pokemon as well. Again, those Pokemon, are kind of uncomfortable to look at to begin with. And, Bruxis is one of those Pokemon as well. Very uncomfortable to look at, very, creepy Pokemon design. Yep, that's my least favorite standalone evolution. So my next least favorite standalone evolution is Unknown. Unknown is completely useless in all facets every single time. How could a Pokemon be that useless? You might think that Unknown's a legendary Pokemon or something like that, considered its prominence, in creating the universe. But here's Unknown's moveset. Okay? Here's Unknown's amazing moveset. Okay, what is Unknown's amazing moveset? Well, it's just hidden power. Here's its base stats. It's abysmal. Okay. But Unknown's only known move is hidden power. And there are 28 forms of this garbage Pokemon. Okay. Out of all Pokemon that have not been put in the Pokemon Sword and Shield, this is the least deserving to be in the game because it's just so horrible. Well, it's such a horrible Pokemon. Why would you use it in your game? Why would you need to use this Pokemon in your game at all costs? Unknown is just a Pokemon that I think nobody wants in the Pokemon games. Okay, yeah, there we go. Unknown's most useless Pokemon of all time. Basically, the most useless and most worthless Pokemon of all time. Number 3, worst single stage evolutions of all time is Delibird. So when you think of horrible Pokemon, you think of Pokemon with one move. Delibird is another one of those Pokemon. Delibird has abysmal stats and only runs one move, okay? Only runs one move, and that's Present, which has a chance of healing you. It can also run TM moves, but in earlier generations, you can only use TMs once. So you wouldn't want to waste a TM on Delibird. It can run so many good moves as well, like Blizzard and stuff, and Brave Bird, in some of the games as well. In some of these games, it's also in Gen 8 as well, so you have to deal with this dumb bird. It's to really just get a evolution or more moves or something to make it stand out from all the other Pokemon. It's just a very useless Pokemon that you wouldn't want to have. No, it's not. No, it's not even in Gen 8. It's not even in Gen 8. It didn't even appear in that game either. The Santa Bird Pokemon has been forgotten about, and even by Game Freak themselves. So, not surprised at all that Delibird did not make it into Gen 8. The next worst single stage evolution has to go to Luvdisc. Luvdisc is another very useless Pokemon to have on your team. It's another very worthless Pokemon with horrible stats, with horrible ability. What's so great about Luvdisc? Well, I'll tell you, nothing. There was nothing so great about Luvdisc, because this is another Pokemon that didn't even make it into Pokemon Sword and Shield either. I'm still not going to get Sword and Shield, but this Pokemon's so awful. They didn't like Unknown, like, the other one. They didn't even make Pokemon Sword and Shield because it's just so useless and so worthless in-game. It's just, why would you use an Unknown in any circumstances whatsoever? Why would you use an Unknown? Because that way, Bruxis, I hate Bruxis. I hate this Pokemon. I hate looking at this thing. But at least it's not useless. But I would never use a Bruxis because I don't want to have to look at it. And it also didn't make it to Gen 8 because it's just a creepy and ugly Pokemon. That's just why would you use it. Number 5, worst single stage evolutions, I think has to go down to another older Pokemon, Castform. Castform is cute, but again, it has horrible stats. Why would I use a Castform over any other Pokemon? It's especially horrible in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon in that series of games as well. But Castform is one of those Pokemon that needs better stats and better moveset, and it'll be at least useful. But Castform is another Pokemon that you wouldn't want to use on your team at all. Castform, looks like a cloud. It also looks like a pair of balls too. But there's another Pokemon that looks like a pair of balls as well. I don't like called. But yeah, I don't think it made. Yeah, it didn't even make it to the next Gen 8, to Gen 8 either, because Castform is just not that great stat-wise. There's really no reason to use Castform. Okay, it was a gimmick when Weather was introduced. It actually has a stat total of 420, which is funny. But why would he use this? This Pokemon has a horrible moveset. Its best moves are like Ember. Why would he use Ember? It should have moves like Fire Blast or stuff like that. Moves that would actually be useful in a playthrough, not Ember. Okay, yeah, Castform would be a horrible Pokemon to use in a playthrough. Just like Love This, just like Delibird. And that's why I don't like, and that's why Castform is one of the worst single stage evolutions. It's really a Pokemon that really needs an evolution. The next worst single stage evolution is Pinerton. What the hell was Pinerton? It's one of the ugliest things that Pokemon has ever produced. So Pinerton is a Pokemon introduced in the Generation 8 of video games. No, not Gen 8 of Pokemon. And just look at its design. It's just absolutely horrible. Okay, and again, like the previous Pokemon on the list, Delibird, Castform, there's really no use for this Pokemon. It's a pure electric type. But there was much better pure electric types in that region. There's much better pure electric types in Pokemon Sword and Shield. It's just, why would he use this Pokemon? It's also not a Pokemon that should be a water type. It even works many water type moves. But for some reason, it isn't a water type. It's just this Pokemon just makes no sense at all. This Pokemon's horrible and had this very useless. And also, you find it near at the end of the game where you already will have either a Pikachu or a Boltund or any other electric type that isn't Pinerton. So the number 7th worst single stage evolution Pokemon. Farfetch'd already has an evolution, so in its standard form, so we can't count that. But the 7th worst Pokemon of this category is Stantler. Stantler is just a horrible Pokemon. It's ugly, first of all, and they made a much better deal Pokemon in Gen 5, Dealing and Salzburg. Way better deal Pokemon than this deal Pokemon. It's so forgotten that Game Freak just made it so hard to get in other games. The only way to get in Gen 6 is by Mirage's Mountain and Abundant Shrine in Pokemon Black and White, but most of the games is just, you can't get it. You cannot get this Pokemon because it's very rare. Because no one wants to use this Pokemon. It's such an ugly Pokemon. And it's just so forgettable. It's probably one of the worst pure normal types. And in the generation it is in, why don't you just use a better Pokemon? Like Snorlax or Pidgeot or any other Pokemon besides, Delibird and Unknown, And also it's just such an ugly looking Pokemon as well. It's just ugly. Yeah, if you want to use a Deal Pokemon, just play Gen 5 and use Dealing instead. Just don't use this thing. Because at least Dealing gets a grass typing. Again, it gives it more weaknesses, but it gives it a grass typing as well. So, yeah, so there we go. That is Stantler. Number 7. Number 8, worst single stage evolutions, I think has to be Basculin. Basculin is another one of those Pokemon I think nobody cares about. I think nobody's gonna care if I say Basculin is a horrible Pokemon, because Basculin is a horrible Pokemon. So Basculin is a Pokemon that was introduced in Gen 5 as a replacement for Magikarp, and also has appeared in many games since then in X and Y and Ultra Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield. To be a filler Pokemon, basically. And it has no evolutions. It basically has 4 abilities, because there's 2 different forms, which both suck. they're both useless. It's just a Pokemon that they put in to fill in the waters of Gen 5. We're like, oh, we don't have a Magikarp equivalent to Gen 5. And also just put Magikarp, we gotta make a new Pokemon. And there you go. We got Basculin, a Pokemon that nobody uses. You know, Basculin is a completely useless Pokemon. Its stats are, the speed is actually okay, but it isn't really a, good Pokemon to use at any circumstances. Just use a Gyarados instead in any later generations, and you'll be much better off with a Gyarados than a useless Basculin. So the next worst first stage evolution, the ninth worst first stage evolution, I think has to be Spindle. So Spindle is another pure normal type Pokemon in Gen 3, and Spindle is just complete garbage. Look at Spindle's stats, and you'll see, oh, Spindle is completely useless and utterly useless. Completely and utterly useless. It has a stats of 360. I guess it's a joke to 360 because it's always dizzy, but it's a very useless Pokemon. Spindle is a Pokemon that I think no one would want to use on their team because of how useless it is. Much like all the rest of the Pokemon on this list, Spindle serves no purpose at all, like Rodop and many others. And yep, I think this Pokemon is even for, this Pokemon is in Sword. I know it's Ash Pokemon Go. Not Sword and Shield, but yep, this Pokemon is not even in Sword and Shield because I don't think Game Freak cares about this Pokemon either. So yep, there you go. Number 9 is Spindle. So the number 10th worst Pokemon is actually 2 Pokemon. Volbeat and Luminaise. These Pokemon, I love Gen 3, but a lot of these Gen 3 Pokemon single stage evolutions are horrible. What's so great about Volbeat and Luminaise? Nothing. They're just pure, boring bug types. And 2 Pokemon that just that sort of just been a simple gender difference Pokemon. But nope, these are 2 separate Pokemon because we have to have 2 separate Pokemon it's again, Nidoran Pokemon, the reason why they have 2 different Pokemon because there were no gender differences in the Game Boy games because of limitations. So you had to create 2 different Pokemon. But that is probably the saddest excuse of those ones, because Volbeat is 100% male and Luminaise is the opposite. So they already have genders in this game. They sort of made this a gender difference Pokemon. I think nobody would have, it would have been another really forgettable Pokemon. But again, these 2 Pokemon are not that great. They're horrible Pokemon to use in battle. They have horrible stats all across the board. 400 basically. And 430 and Generation 7, but those stats were never really used because they were basically just kicked out of Pokemon because of how useless they are. And yep, there we go, that's the worst single-stage Pokemon of all time. Now let's go to the best single-stage Pokemon of all time. So these are the best of the best ones, and there's a lot of really good single-stage evolutions. Of course, we went over all the bad ones. I gotta go over more honorable mentions of some bad ones here. So some more pretty bad single stages is Puzzle and Mine. And they're really cute, but they're still pretty bad. As well. Carnivine, pretty forgettable. And of course, the Galarian fossils. I will put those in the top 10, but I know people will complain anyways. And of course, Mimikyu. Yep, those are the rest of the remaining horrible single stage evolutions. So here are the best single stage evolutions. And also NDD would be in the worst as well. But yep, now we're going to the best single stage evolutions. And these are in no particular order because I like all these Pokemon. The first Pokemon is Scomberry. Scomberry is a pretty good steel flying type introduced in Generation 2. Generation 2, had a lot of stinkers of single stage Pokemon, but there are a few good ones. Scomberry is a steel flying type, that is introduced in Generation 2. It actually was not even put into Gen 8 games because of Corviknight, but Corviknight is a pretty cool Pokemon as well. And yep, Scomberry is a pretty good and useful Pokemon. It has the ability Sturdy. It's a Steel type, but it always means it's going to be a good Pokemon unless it's Meltan Melmetal. But though we don't want to remind people that those Pokemon exist. But yep, 465 stats, but it has lots of defenses, which is pretty good for any Pokemon. It's not really good on the special side, but it's pretty good on the offense, normal attack and defense. So it's pretty bad against psychic types, but that's special attackers. But again, it's a pretty good defensive wall. So it's really useful against defensive, battles. And also it's pretty good. It can also get Metal Coats from at 5% of the time, so you can use it to evolve, get Sizzle as well, which is a pretty good Pokemon as well. So, yep. And it has a pretty good move pool here. It runs, all these great moves in Generation 8. They brought back in the Isle Armor and Crown Tons with DLC. It was like one of the first Pokemon they brought back. Because the Game Freak knows how great Scomberry is. Like, the reason why they didn't put it in the base game was because they wanted to give some attention to the new Flying Steel type Corviknight. And I think, yeah, they gave Corviknight some justice. Giving it, basically so people don't just use Scomberry again instead of Corviknight. So people can give Corviknight a chance. I think that was a pretty good idea to give Corviknight a chance. To give people give that Pokemon a chance and have its usefulness shine in battle. So next best first stage Pokemon, I think, has to be Mimikyu. Mimikyu, they nerfed it in Generation 8. But Mimikyu has a pretty overpowered ability called Disguise. So Disguise is a ability that basically, gives you one free hit. I think Game Freak knew that was a bit overpowered to give it a tiny bit of damage now every single time you get hit by Disguise. But you don't really take a lot of hits. It's like 1 or 2 damage, basically. Like 10 damage, here. But Mimikyu has Mimikyu doesn't really, has a 476 stats. It's mostly a defensive and attacker. It doesn't really have that amazing health, but Mimikyu already has a pretty overpowered ability, so it doesn't really matter how much health it has. It also has a pretty good move set as well. Running Saddle Stick, Saddle Claw, and running many moves by TM like Saddle Claw as well, which again is an older move it runs. And also runs moves like Hex, Transport, and Draining Kiss and Saddle Ball as well. And some of these games as well. Here in Generation 8. So it runs a lot of pretty good moves, essentially, in the games. It's a pretty good Pokemon to use in, your Pokemon games. Whether it's Gen 7 or Gen 8. But, yep. In Gen 7, you get very far in the game, but still pretty good to use, basically. So, yep, there we go. And, yep. And, of course, Mimikyu want to be loved, and now it is loved by the entire Pokemon fanbase. I don't think anyone really hates Mimikyu at all. It's a Pokemon that I think everybody would use on their team. The next best Pokemon on this list, I think, would have to be Lapras. Lapras is basically the quintessential... Oh, not you, Kangaskhan. Wrong Pokemon. I accidentally clicked on Kangaskhan. And I was going to click on Aerodactyl. Okay, Lapras. Lapras is a pretty useful Pokemon in every generation it has been in. It has been a staple of surfing Pokemon in every game, basically, except for the generations where it's basically a post-game Pokemon. Like, for example, in Gen 3, like in Gen 3 and, of course, Gen 4. Gen 4, you can only get it in Victory Road after you beat the game. But in many of the other games, you can basically get it pretty early. For example, in Gen 6... and X and Y can basically get it for free in the game. So, and same thing of Gen 1, you get it for free. And Gen 2, basically, on Friday you can get a free Lapras in the game, but you still have to have Surf to get Lapras. But you just can get a item slave to get it and use it. I used it in Pokemon X and Y. It was a pretty useful Pokemon in the games. You can also get in Gen 7, and of course in Gen 9 you can get it basically in everywhere, basically. Even without Surf, it's still a pretty useful Pokemon. It has pretty good stats all around. A 545. I don't think anyone can complain about that. If you don't have a water type, this is a pretty good Pokemon to have on your team. And it also has a pretty amazing moveset. It's also Ice type, so it can deal with those pesky dragons as well. Here, so yep, there we go. So that is Lapras, the third best. This is in no particular order. That's thinking of Pokemon off the top of my head. All these Pokemon are useful in some form. So, yep. Number 4 is Rodop. The Rodop is a very useful Pokemon because it can turn to many forms. Even base Rodop is very useful as well. Rodop has also been, making, is also evading other things like a Rotom Phone, Rotom Dex, and Drone Rotoms. In the anime, basically here, Rodop is basically a very useful Pokemon, in a lot of ways. It's a ghost type, which is always useful, like Mimikyu, but it also has the, electronics. It can affect the electronics and basically turn it into a new Pokemon. It also runs a new stab move for each of those moves. So it basically gives this Pokemon a lot of versatility because it can basically take over electronics, basically like that. It has a pretty good moveset. It had, basically, you know, it also has a lot of good TM moves as well. Running moves like Will to get the fire. It runs some psychic type moves as well. And it also runs moves like a lot of good electric type moves and ghost type moves as well. Runs Hex, Confuse Ray, and was it now a ghost type now? I thought it was a psychic type, but they changed it to a ghost type apparently. Astonish, but it runs Shadow Ball, which is probably one of the best ghost type moves of all time. So yep, there we go. That's Rodop, the next best Pokemon of those types. The next Pokemon we're going back to Gen 2, and that is Heracloud. So Heracloud is the bug fighting type from Gen 2, and of course Heracloud has always been a pretty useful Pokemon on many teams. So it's a bug type and it's a fighting type. It was actually the original Pokemon to only one Mega Horn, but it is a very useful Pokemon in a lot of playthroughs. Here they brought it back in the expansion pass, basically here. And yep, it is a very useful Pokemon to have on your team. Now, as well as a fighting type, which means it gets rock types pretty easily. It's out normal types, so if you want Headbutt for Gym, you can get essentially a Pokemon that can counter Mood Tank very easily, which is always very useful because nobody likes that fat cow that Whitney owns as well. But yep, it runs a lot of useful moves as well by TM. And it's a very versatile and useful Pokemon to have on your team. It's always the original Pokemon that won Mega Horn as well. And Mega Horn and Close Combat are pretty good moves for any Pokemon as well. So yep, that is Heracross, the 5th best Pokemon. The next one is a surprising one, and that is Suckle. You might think that Suckle is a horrible Pokemon because of its stats, but Suckle is basically the ultimate. Some people like to make fun of Suckle, but it's Suckle. How can you hate it? It's a pretty underutilized Pokemon in terms of, uses. Of course, you wouldn't want to use one on a team, but it's just a pretty good. If you really want to have a Pokemon that's like extremely defensive, it doesn't really have a lot of health, but it's a very defensive and tanky Pokemon. It has one of the highest defenses and special defenses in the game. It's a Pokemon, if you really want to store out your opponents like Blissey, you just use a Suckle. Just continue to use like moves like Defend, like Withdraw and Safeguard, all the moves it was. It's basically a Pokemon that is, it's made for, Cell Smash especially is a very useful move for a Pokemon like Suckle. Cell Smash is a very useful move for Pokemon like Suckle. So if you wanna use it on your team to basically surprise someone else, yep, Suckle is one of those Pokemon to use. It might not be the best Pokemon on your playthrough, but it's still a pretty useful Pokemon if you want to stall for time essentially on your team. So Suckle is another Pokemon there. Next is Torkoal. Torkoal is a fire type that was introduced in Gen 3. It's kind of tank. It's like Suckle. It's pretty tanky as well, but it has way more health. It is a fire type. So Torkoal has to say its face stat total of 470, which is pretty good for a one-stage evolution, and it's basically a fire type, which is a very useful type as well, because there's not many fire types in Gen 3, so Torkoal is one of the options for you. And it's a pretty good option overall. Yes, I think, did they forget? Yeah, they put, all the good ones they brought back. All the good ones they always bring back. But yep, for, Gen 8. But they always forget the horrible ones, which is not surprising. But yep, Torkoal is another useful Pokemon. The next two Pokemon are also from Gen 3, so we're going to go over them pretty quickly. And that is Tropius and Absol. Not you, Wubdisk. You're not gonna sneak your way onto the good list. You suck up. You suck, Wubdisk. But yep, Tropius is a grass flying type. Which you might think, oh, that's not good. Grass flying type. Oh yeah, grass types. My least favorite, grass types are not really my favorite types, but this is a pretty useful Pokemon. It is actually unobtainable in Sword and Shield, but it's still pretty useful regardless, because it's a flying type. It's a it also is one of the 3 primary types as well, and yep, it is pretty useful in the game, and yeah, it's basically a pretty good grass type if you want to use it on your team. And then we have Absol. Absol is a dark type, and again, Absol was completely useless in Gen 3, but they improved Absol a lot in the other games. Because Absol, of course, was a physical attacker, but most of the moves it runs were special. But they improved it, and they made Absol a way better Pokemon now. They even gave it a Mega Evolution as well, and now they gave it a ton of physical moves, which is a physical attack. It only wants one special move by Overwarp. It wants a bunch of physical moves. It's basically a massive physical attack. Of course, it can still give it special moves. There's no one stopping you from giving it all these special moves as well, like Ice Beam, Blizzard, and Hyper Beam. But it's mostly primarily a physical attacker. But it's primarily a good physical attacker Pokemon. Basically, if you want to basically run through a bunch of, special defense Pokemon that have poor, physical attack, or just run through the game as well. Absol's another pretty good Pokemon as well. It also gets a Mega Evolution in Gen 6 and Gen 7, which makes it a pretty useful Pokemon as well, in those games. And yep, it also was brought back in Sword and Shield for the DLC as well. So, and also, yeah, Absol's not going to end the world. The next Pokemon is Spiritomb. Surprisingly, Spiritomb is a... Yeah, surprisingly that the guy who made that original video did not talk about Spiritomb. Spiritomb is, of course, a Ghost Dark type, which is a pretty good typing as a whole. Ghost Dark type in Gen 4 and Gen 5 had no weakness, so you really had a Pokemon without any weaknesses at all. Now its only weakness is a Fairy typing, but it's a pretty useful Pokemon regardless. Most Pokemon it will resist except for Fairy. Was the only Pokemon that would counter Fairy. So its the only weakness is Fairy. And if you're not finding any Fairy types, it essentially has no weakness like Electros. If you avoid Fairy types, find it, you're probably gonna avoid Fairy types. So essentially, Spiritomb, if you avoid Fairy types, it has basically no weakness if you avoid Fairy types as a whole. And yep, there we go. It can also get all these amazing moves. Spiritomb can. It's another pretty good Gen 4 Pokemon as well. Just like Rotom as well. So, next we go to Gen 5. And there's another one is Sizzliff. So, Sizzliff is here. Sizzliff it's probably the best of the Gen 5, single stage evolutions. It's a Psychic Flying type, which is already pretty good. It's available in those games as well. But it's available in Sword and Shield as well. But it's also pretty useful. Warns a lot of Psychic and Flying type. It also has a pretty good inspiration as well. But it's a pretty useful Psychic Flying type as well. Because, it's essentially, it's a pretty good Psychic type and Flying type. It has pretty good stats all around. It's a pretty useful Pokemon. You might think it's a weird Pokemon at first, but it's actually a pretty useful Pokemon if you have it on your team. It also has a bunch of weaknesses, which is basically a typical, weaknesses for Flying and Psychic, but it's a pretty useful Pokemon to have on your team, regardless of its weaknesses. So, I said Tropius is a pretty good one, and that has a ton of weaknesses as well. So, the next Pokemon on the list is Hawutsa. Hawutsa is a pretty useful Pokemon to have on your team. It is Fighting Flying, which is a pretty unique and good type. I think this Pokemon fits the type perfectly. It can run a ton of moves that are basically just Flying type and Fighting type. Here. And also runs a bunch of useful moves in those games as well. It's also a pretty cool designed Pokemon as well. So, Hawutsa is the next Pokemon on the list. And then the last Pokemon on the list is Phalanx. Yeah, but you have to give at least Gen 8 one post. Pokemon. And Phalanx is probably the best of the one-stage Pokemon that generation. It's a pure Fighting type, but it's basically runs a bunch of good Fighting type moves. It also runs Rock Smash at level 5. It also runs Mega Horn Close Combat as well. It's based off, Roman soldiers and stuff. And it's a pretty good Pokemon as well. So, there we go. That is the best Pokemon of each generation. Single stage evolutions. And worst. Of course, I gotta go over the worst as well. So, that's basically it. Goodbye.